the age-old objections to personality type. I have some favorites, and this is my quick take on how to deal with them. Some of my favorites include phrases like, "Oh, but I think I'm actually both," or "Don't put me in a box, man," or "Don't stereotype me." And really what all of these objections come down to is that someone doesn't know enough about how the theory of personality type and Jungian's personality types works. And that's where some of those challenges come from. They don't know, and so they object. So I'm going to give you my quick take on how to address some of these and what I hope is the most effective manner. First of all, I'm going to give you the number one tip right up front so you're not wasting any time. The number one tip is address all these objections before they actually come up. If you can address them ahead of time, either acknowledge them explicitly or however you normally talk about type happens to actually cover how that these aren't really things they would be concerned about, then that is where you're going to get your most benefit. So just FYI, if you take nothing else from this video, that's it. Number one tip, make sure you address this before they come up. But now, let me give you my quick take on how to address these more specifically. So, the first basic solution to solving this problem is to make sure and cover type sufficiently in a way that actually covers these objections. So, good examples of that are, of course, one of my favorites is, "But I do both." And that typically comes from the misunderstanding that if one gets back from their type indicator of the letter E, that means I am an extrovert and only an extrovert, and I never have any introverted moments. And that's the exact opposite of what we're trying to communicate, but is a common misinterpretation from seeing that letter on any kind of type results that they get back from any assessment or any process. So, where you get the real benefit then is helping people understand that for each of these preferences, it's a preference scale. It is like left and right-handed. Many people in the type community have used the handedness metaphor to address this. That whole, everyone is both left and right-handed. If it's a heavy box, you carry it with both hands. And as a result, what we're talking about is still which hand you prefer, which it turns out in the real world is very useful. For example, do you want right or left-handed scissors? Right? When you're cutting something, it's useful to use both hands to cut it out, but having the right kind of scissors is helpful. Same kind of thing with a mouse. If anybody ever's tried to use a mouse built for the wrong kind of handedness, you know how painful that is. And that's what we're talking about, is those preferences. And so making sure you address that these are preferences as early as possible can really help people get over the objection around, "Hey, but I am both." And there's a variety of other wonderful tips and tools that can be used to show that people are actually both. One of my favorites is to use visual type to show how they use all 8 Jungian functions, as an example. Now, that's kind of the first way to do it. And really, actually, in some ways, it takes a lot of work because you're having to explain type to them in the right way ahead of time so that they don't mistake how it's being used, right? So you're trying to really educate them. And that does carry with it some challenges. So here's my other strategy. And that is that you're really going to, instead of focusing on the model and training them on all the details, you instead focus on the benefits. And it turns out that's what actually people most often want anyway, is the benefit. And here I'm referring to gifts differing. Meaning that benefit of understanding that, oh, me and this other person aren't the same, and we have different approaches to things, and that's what we're trying to get to with any of the models. Whether you're talking the Jungian functions, whether you're talking the MBTI, whether you're talking four-letter type code, you're talking interaction styles, essential motivators, temperament, any of these models, what you're really getting to is, oh, I have one way of doing things, and you have a different way, or other people have other ways, and when they're doing that thing that's really annoying to you, it's probably not because they hate you. It's probably just because they have their own approach. And helping people understand that up front really helps avoid a whole bunch of the objections right off the bat. And there are lots of ways to communicate that in various ways. One of the most popular one is doing any kind of group workshop is to do some activities. That's a common way to help people really understand that. And there's some other great tips as well to avoid these kinds of objections. But these are kind of that high-level quick take on how you can quickly and hopefully effectively make sure to avoid some of these type of objections. You may not have noticed what I did with the left and right-handed example earlier. And so I'm now going to share with you 2 secret changes I make to that analogy. I'm going to give you my secrets here about how to make sure that that example, left and right-handed, is serving the core benefits we want to achieve and really answering their objections first, number 1, and 2, explaining that core benefit of type around helping people make their lives better. The first is, right off the bat, you'll notice early in my example, I expressly talk about how, when things are heavy, you use both hands. I make it very clear right from the beginning what it is that we're talking about, that this is something that you use both hands, but you have one that you have a preference for. And so again, that's attempting to resolve the objections before they even come up about I do both. So that's one way in which we're doing it. The second way I'm modifying it is I'm using the examples of scissors or a mouse, a left and right-handed version. And one of the reasons why is because that's something that makes a difference when you're trying to do something. If you're trying to cut something, getting the right scissors matters. And you can do it with the offhand, just like if that's not your preferred function, you can use it. It's just that it's not as much fun. And there's another reason I use scissors and mice, is that that's a good example of an adaptation that a workplace can do to help you be more effective, which is what we're talking about with type. How can you make small changes in your workspace, your environment, your life, that actually make a difference and improve it? So for the small cost of left-handed scissors or left-handed mice, you can make your workforce happier and more effective. It's a small adaptation that they can make to be more effective. And that's the kind of core benefit we're talking about with type. Hey, with some small modifications, you can make this work better for people with a preference for introversion, or people with a preference for thinking or feeling or judging and perceiving. It's about how do you get to that? What's the benefit? And by using an example where most people can go, oh yeah, I could use the wrong hand, but I'd rather prefer the right one. And honestly, that seems like a reasonable thing to ask for. We're encouraging that kind of behavior, which is back to the core benefit of type, which is really helping people make their lives better with the small changes that can make a huge difference.